So first of all, before we start the third lecture in Mesilat Yesharim, Path of the Just, I want to thank very much Karen Templeton, who's here, who let us use her home, and thank everyone for coming here. Those that came in person, those that are here online, we really appreciate this, and hopefully we'll have a really fun time and learn a lot tonight. So today we are about to start the beginning of the meat of the book. We read the introduction, and it's time for us to learn how to follow the path of the just. What is the path of the just? So this chapter, in Hebrew, it was named by Ramchal, Beveur Kilal Chovat Adam Olamo, in explanation of the general obligation of the human being within his world. Okay, so it's a pretty broad introduction, right? He's telling us what's the bottom line, what are we obligated to do. Now there are a few things that I'm going to point out as we learn this chapter, and we're going to see that this chapter is essentially laying the foundations of Judaism itself as a religion, right? So what he's doing, and I'm not an expert in other religions, but we all know enough, little bits and pieces of other religions, and you're going to see how uniquely he sets out the vision of Judaism, and also in its value on its own, and also in contrast to what some other religions may teach as the fundamentals, right? And the first thing he chooses to do, we're going to start reading now. And I'm going to do like I usually do. I'm going to read the Hebrew, I'm going to translate, and everyone's going to follow in whichever translations they're following in. If I veer a little different, and if it's something that you want to point out, please do so. If the other translations might pick up on things that I miss, I might pick up on things that other translations might miss. But he starts off with the bottom line. Now, remember, this is a book about ethics. When most of us learn ethics today, personally as a physician, I remember learning medical ethics, right? Most of us in our fields learn ethics of whatever field you're in. We study the ethics, and how are we supposed to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is that we do. We are very used to and accustomed in the Western secular world to view the world as an ethics as a rights-based, right? In other words, what are the rights of the individual involved, right? What rights does a person have, right? What rights does the society have? We have a right to freedom, a right to pursuit of happiness, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, whichever, and this is the Western civilization is founded on a rights-based system of ethics. And there's different ways, of course, of understanding it, different ways of balancing the rights of this, the rights of an individual, the rights of a nation, etc. Judaism is fundamentally different from that. It has a completely different system, and the Ramchal is about to lay that system out for us so that we understand what Judaism is about, and that is, it's an obligation-based system of ethics. Judaism looks at the world as what is this individual's, in other words, we each look at it from our own perspective, what is our obligation? How am I supposed to act in this case? And when you talk about obligations, you're necessarily talking about actions, right? What am I supposed to do? Right? It is not about what rights do I have, but it's about what am I supposed to do. And when we look at a nation, we look about what is that nation's obligation? What are they supposed to do in this situation? There's a fascinating book that my father gave to me years ago, and I still have it on my shelf and I look at it often. It's called Duty and Healing by a person by the name of Benjamin Friedman. It was published, I think, back in the 1980s. Unfortunately, he himself passed away very young from cancer, and he was a chaplain in the McGill Hospital in Montreal, Canada. Jewish chaplain, but he was the head of the chaplain department in that hospital. And he wrote this book where he really was the first person to lay it out in medical ethics. The reason why that book is dear to my heart, because he discusses medical ethics, and he shows how when you have a medical situation, right? Where there's an ethical conundrum. Do I act this way or that way, right? The way that most of the other people tried to decide was, what are the rights? What are the rights of the patient? What are the rights of the family? What are the rights of society? Should we be paying for something like this? And so on and so forth. And he tried to show how, even if you subtract Judaism from the picture, but if you look at it as obligation based, what are the obligations of the patient, him or herself? What are the obligations of the physicians? What are the obligations of the nurses? What are the obligations of the family? What are the obligations of the hospital? You get a very different picture, right? And when you're trying to decide how to proceed with a certain thing. So the Ramchal is about to lay this out. Okay, he's going to say Yesod HaChasidus, right? The foundation of piety, v'shoresh ha'avoda, and the roots of hatmima, of pure and proper service. Who is sheyit borer v'yit amet etzel ha'adam? A person needs to. It has to be clear and true to a person. Ma chovato ba'olamo. What are his obligations in the world olamo within which he lives? Right? So each person needs to look around at the world. This is the world within which I live. What are my obligations here? What am I supposed to do? That's the bottom line. And it's very, very powerful idea. But to really understand Judaism and to understand what the Ramchal is going to be teaching us, that's how we need to approach our lives. It's not about what rights I have. It's what am I supposed to do now, here, in the place, in the world in which I reside. Where should I look? Where should my goals be? Where should I be looking? What kind of future should I be looking at and working towards? And goals. In every single thing we do, entire lives, every action that we take, we need to be thinking, what is my objective? What is my purpose? Where am I going? That's the bottom line. Okay, you just got it. The bottom line, according to the Ramchal, of every single situation. And think for a moment, just that alone is enough for us to go home with, right? We can go home and now start thinking, it's not about what rights I have. It's not about what needs I have. It's not about what I want to feel, what I want to know, what I want to accomplish, what I want to achieve, what I want to acquire, what pleasures I want to experience. It's about what am I supposed to do? And what I'm doing, where am I supposed to make that go? What am I trying to accomplish with that which I'm about to do? Okay, so if we have to look at everything we do from this perspective, bottom line. Vehine. So now let's look to guidance from our text. So what then is this goal? What is this goal that I'm trying to achieve? Right? It should be Sheha'adam lo nivra. The purpose of human existence, the reason why we are created, is el hitanega Hashem, in order to derive pleasure from our relationship with God, ulehanot miziv shchinato, and to derive benefit from the shine of His presence. In other words, being close to God. That is ultimately where we're supposed to aim. So in every action that we do, we need to think, how is it bringing me closer to that objective? And not just me, of course, then he's going to say, me and everything that is around me and everything that is affected by my actions. Shezehu hatanug ha'amiti, because the true pleasure is that closeness to God. From all the pleasures of the world, this is the real one. That's the only one that we really should be pushing towards. So Humakoma Idun has that. And I'm going to make a couple observations of this next sentence that are, I think, very, very crucial. I want to contrast a little with a very simplistic understanding of a concept that many of us might be familiar with. It's called the concept of the world to come. I don't know, is your vision blurry or something? I'm not sure. Maybe it's... It all of a sudden got blurry. I don't know. Okay, whatever. So I'm blurry. That's fine, as long as people could hear me. So where is this? Where do we get this benefit? Right? Where do we get this wonderful experience of feeling this presence of God or our closeness with God? Where is it? Is it in a temple somewhere? Is it on the mountaintop? Is it in the synagogue? Is it in our private meditation room? right? Is there a place we can go? In other words, can we achieve this? Can we ever get there? Now, there is a concept that many of us hear all the time. It's called the world to come. Okay. Now we use that phrase, world to come, and we think of it as there's two worlds, right? There is the olam hazeh, the world which we live in today, the present, and then there's this world to come, some sort of utopian nirvana that the whole world's going to come to, some wonderful bliss or whatever it is that we imagine as the world to come. The phrase world to come is probably one of the worst mistranslations of a Hebrew term that has ever been coined in the history of translations, because it has completely messed up the brains of probably most Jews and most people in the world. The word olam haba, right, which is often and usually translated as world to come. And you can ask any linguist, and the Hebrew linguist, and they'll tell you that I'm right on this. Does not mean the world to come. Olam haba means that is coming. Olam haba means the world that is coming. Olam hazeh means the world that is here, that is this, that is the one that is right in front of me. The olam haba does not mean some nirvana, some bliss that is out there in the future, that is a different world, a different existence. It means the future. It means that which is coming. So when Ramchal is about to tell us that everything we do is about olam haba, what he's trying to tell us is that nothing is about the present. Every decision we make, it's not about me feeling good now. It's about what am I going to achieve to make the future better. Okay, so that which is coming is better than it was today for me now. For me, for my family, for my community, for the entire world, and for all of nature, which we're going to see in a minute as well. Ki hu hanivra b'hachana hamitzarechus ladavar hazeh, right? Because he, right, it is that which is created, right, with which is necessary for this to achieve this goal. How do we get to that? How do we get to that time when we all can benefit from that special relationship with God? What do we do? Who Olam is in dealing with the present. By dealing with the present, we can then affect the future and make the world that is coming a better something, right? We have the power to do that. So he's laying down some of the most basic and most important foundations of our religion here. Go ahead, please.
My question is, does this actually relate to the messianic future?
So,
or is this unrelated?
So it certainly does relate to the messianic future, but the Ramchal here does not discuss his vision of the future, right? Other than saying that it's us enjoying a close relationship with God, right? But he doesn't say anything here about a Messiah, what it looks like, how it's going to happen, what it feels like. Are we going to be spiritual beings, physical beings, all kinds of ideas about the future that abound throughout our religion and all religions. He's not discussing that here because that's not his point. His point is we need to realize that our actions today are in preparation to make tomorrow better. Does that make sense? And to make tomorrow a place where we're closer to achieving that goal of closeness to God, whatever closeness to God means.
So he would agree with your translation?
I think 1,000%, yes.
Okay.
And olam haba, I have no doubt that my translation is correct. Haba, if you look at it in a dictionary, right, means that is coming, right? So how do you get there? Ha'olam hazeh, this world, when we live every day, the decisions we make every day, the world we live in every day, it is similar to a prosdar, a corridor, a hallway, an entranceway, right? Before the world that is coming, right? Because the world that we function in is always a preparation for something. It's always an entrance into another room. There's always something that comes next. There's always a tomorrow that we need to prepare for. And here's the kicker, right? How do we go about achieving a better tomorrow? Now, some other religions would say you have to have faith in a certain idea, okay? Some other religions would tell you need to have faith in a certain person as a Messiah, right? Some other religions would tell you need to meditate, right? You need to withdraw from this world. But that's not what Judaism teaches. And I'm not saying this specifically in order to knock other religions. I'm saying this in order to emphasize the importance of what the Ramchal is saying here and what our religion is teaching. What's the bottom line? What is our religion teach? How do we affect that world of tomorrow? Right? Hem ha-mitzvot, those are the commandments, asher tzivonu aleinu el yisbarach lishmo, that God, blessed be He, commanded us. U'mikom asiyat ha-mitzvot hu rak olam hazeh. How do we do these things? In other words, these mitzvot, these commandments, these are actions that we do, right? How do we affect tomorrow? By doing things, not by thinking things, not by imagining things, not by praying things, not by believing in things, not by meditating, but by doing, by action, by doing mitzvot. That is how we make the world a better place. That is how we prepare the world for better tomorrow. It's so important to understand that he's laying down this thing to explain kalal chovat adam ba'olamo, what is the obligation of a human being in the world within which he lives, right? Al kain, therefore, husam ha'adam ba'zeh ha'olam b'tchila. A person, before we achieve this wondrous world, why didn't we have a world where we all just, if the point is to enjoy this closeness to God, we should just be close to God and finish, right? But no, we were put in this world kedei, in order, sha'al yedei ha'emtzoim ha'ela, through these means, hamizdamnim lo, that present themselves to him, meaning us as people, Kan, here in this world in which we live, yuchal lahagia el hamakom asher hu chalnu shalom ba. That is how you can reach that place, which is the world that is coming. By going through these means, that is how we get there, right? And eventually, hopefully, one day, maybe lirvot sham batov, so that when we get there, we can enjoy the good asher kanolo that you acquired. Aideyam sim'ela. Then it is a world that we built, a world that we acquired, a world that we achieved, as opposed to being a world that just is, right? God wanted us to live through this experience, this painful experience of suffering, this painful experience of challenges, this painful experience of action, so that when there's a result, when we do achieve that time of closeness to God. And I submit that the Olam Haba, the world that is coming, is not a thing that happens 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now. It's constantly happening within our lives. And I'm going to say that now, but as we learn through the Sefer, you're going to decide if you agree with me or not. It's something that we get closer to, we start to experience, and then we have a challenge, and we keep on needing to work and keep on needing to work, so that when we achieve it, it's something that we got. It's something that we made. God wanted the world, and this is a foundational idea in Judaism. God wanted this world to be redeemed, not by some outside power that comes down here and says, poof, everything is better now. Not by some figure that's going to come down and save us all from our misery, right? Not by some, but it's going to be because we did it, because we achieved it, because we accomplished it, right? So we should enjoy it because we kanalo, because we acquired it through the means of doing the mitzvot. This is what Chazal said, the rabbi said when they said, Hayom la'asotam, now today our job is to do, to act. Umachar, tomorrow, that's when l'kabel scharam, that's when we start achieving the benefit of that which we do. I see a hand up online. Yeah. Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yeah. Why are you avoiding the word mitzvah? You mentioned it halfway, 2/3 of the way in this little paragraph you just read, but it says mitzvot. It right. Not only provides clarity, it tells us they're not talking about actions.
Okay, Heim mitzvot. You're right. I did avoid it because I was emphasizing the fact that it's actions, but it's asiyat ha-mitzvot. It's the doing of the mitzvot.
The actions, okay, but
right.
Right.
The Torah is a guidebook. It tells us the actions that we are supposed to do, and that's what the mitzvot are.
Right. So we're within the universe of 613. That's what our universe.
Yes, it would be those mitzvot, right, that we're supposed to do. Those are the actions. The Torah tells us the actions that we're supposed to do.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. And if you look more and deeper into this issue, right, you will see the true wholeness, the true completeness perfection, the true perfection. Urak hadvekut bo yisbarach is only this attachment to God that he's referring to. Okay? That's what King David used to say, it is closeness to God, which to me is the definition of good. Right? And he also says, there's only one thing I ask from God, this is what I search, that I should reside within the house of God all the days of my life. That is what I desire. In other words, that's what I'm working towards. That's how I'm living my life. Kirak zehu hatov. That is the only thing that is good. So if you and I experience something good today, right, it might feel good. I got a new job. I got a raise. I met a new person that I fell in love with. Whatever good happens in your life, right? Okay, that's good, but that's not the real good. The real good is the relationship with God that comes from the doing action of the mitzvot that we talked about. And everything other than that we think is good, it's a mistake. It's false. It's not. It's vain. However, when a person, right, does achieve this good, and this is one of the hints to what I was telling you, that it's a good, that it's not the olam haba, it's not something that's way out there in the future. It's something that we do feel. When you do feel that closeness to God, when you do have that, it is there. It then becomes worthy that he should first work in order to achieve that, right? And try through work to acquire it. And this means he should always continue to try to attach himself to God, may he be blessed, with through the strength of ma'asim, of actions, that the result of those actions are closeness to God. And what are those actions? Those actions are the commandments. And Jeff, that kind of speaks to what he had just brought up, right? So the bottom line is so that we do get bits of devekut, of attachment to God, and we get it through these actions, and we should continue to try through our actions to attain and achieve that. Okay? V'hine, however, samo hakadosh baruch hu la'adam b'makom sherabim bo hamarchikim oto mimenu yisparach. God, may he be blessed, has placed the human being in a place where there are many things that take us away, that bring us far away from him. May he be blessed. And those are our desires for physical things. You know, the physical things that we have, our arrogance, our desires for physical pleasures, and so on and so forth. Our selfish desires. If a person will be drawn after them, he will be pulled away, right? And he will be pulled distant from the pursuit of what is truly good. V'nimtza, and it will come out, it will result from that. Right? He will end up placed in the middle of this giant battle, right? Instead of finding peace, when one acts properly and one does the right thing, one finds and achieves peace. And this would be even if the world around you is a mess. But if you're acting properly and going in the right direction, you find peace. But if you're constantly looking after selfish desires, you're always going to end up in fights. You're always going to end up in fights with the world around you. Because every single thing that's related to this world, bein letov, bein lemutab. The literal translation means whether it's good or whether it's very good, but what he means is whether it's good or very bad, right? Right? It's just like a nice way of saying whether it's good. Now, there's things that we perceive as good or things that we perceive as bad. They are all really just tests, right, for us. Every experience that we have, whether it's an experience of something that feels good to us or an experience of something that feels bad to us, there's still a challenge. There's always going to be a challenge. Whether it's poverty coming at us from one side, which obviously feels bad, right? And it makes us, and it's a huge challenge to deal with. But even wealth is a challenge because because we can use it for selfish purposes, and it can end bringing us into a bad place. K'inyan she'amar Shlomo, like King Solomon said in Proverbs, pen esba v'chichashti v'amarti mi Hashem. Whether, because maybe I will be satisfied, I'll have everything, and then I'm going to go and deny. V'amarti mi Hashem, I'm going to say, who is God? Maybe I'll be poor, v'ganapti, and then I'm going to go and start to steal, right? So no matter which way I go, it could bring me farther away from God, farther away from this goal if I use it in the wrong direction. Hashalva mitzad echad, or peace and tranquility from one side, that could be a challenge, right? V'hayisurin, and suffering mitzad echad could also be a challenge on the other side. If you're not seeking the true goal with your action, if what you're seeking is selfish desires, you're always going to find yourself pitted between these two extremes, and your whole life is going to be conflicted. You're never going to find peace. You're never going to find what you really need, which is closeness with God. But if your goal is to do the right thing, as to act in the right way, to build a better future, then the next day you're going to be closer to that aim and that goal of true peace. But if you can win this war, right, then you can be a truly complete person, a person who's perfect, the person who merits the great achievement of being attached to God himself. And then you can leave this prosdor, you can leave this corridor, this vestibule, right? Again, this gives you the feeling that he's not talking about sometime in the future. He's talking about how we experience it in our own lives. As we make decisions to do the right thing and act in the right way, we can find ourselves stepping out of that vestibule into that world that is coming. Every time we make the right step, we're getting closer. We're actually walking into the palace. And to the extent that you can control your desires and selfish desires and your physical desires, and you can stay away from those things that take us away from this path, from the good path, and we try as hard as we can to attach ourselves to God, so much to that extent, you will attach yourself to God and you will achieve true happiness through that attachment. Again, it's this idea that this Olam Haba is not some mystical world that's going to happen 150 years from now or whatever. It's something that we achieve during our lifetimes as we experience the fruits of our labor to do the actions that bring us in the right direction. So I'm going to stop for a few seconds just to take comments, but because he's going to. So the basic idea, just really quick, that he said now, the bottom line is we need to know what's the point of our existence, and the point of our existence is in order to become closer to God. And how do we do that, right? In other words, we have an obligation to do so. So we have this obligation. That is the point. That's the building block of Judaism. And number two, how do we do that? We do that by doing actions that bring about a better tomorrow. So now go ahead. Yes.
I feel like he's laying out an argument, probably the most common argument, which is, I would, but I was placed in this circumstance. He's saying, well, you would struggle if you were on the other side of it too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would, but the problem is this is your circumstance. Yeah. So, and the challenge is, what do you do in the circumstance that you're in?
And he actually addresses that in Derech Hashem. About how each person is placed in their circumstances, and it's simply our responsibility to make the best of them, and God knows that and he understands that.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yes. Thank you for bringing in some of his other works, because that's important. Yes. Any observations online? All right, so we're about to do the next one, and the next one is also it's all fascinating, so I'm not even going to say that again. So im ta'amik od ba'inyan, but now let's think a little bit more, okay? And what he's saying about now is he's until now he was talking about us as individuals, right? Making decisions as individuals. But think about it a little bit more, and it's much, much, much broader than just me and the little decision that I make as to what I do 5 minutes from now or 1 minute from now. But tir'eh, but if you really think about it deeply, you'll see ki ha'olam nivra l'shimush ha'adam, and this is again something that is very highly mistranslated. Most of the translations will translate this: the world was created for human beings to use, right? It's I'm sorry, or to serve human beings, right? For the use of human beings. The first way I translated it was the way it's supposed to be translated. It should be translated l'shimush ha'adam, was for humans to use. That is the correct translation of this phrase. It does not mean that the world is here that everything is here because for our benefit, right? And you'll see, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Wait till you hear the whole paragraph, and then you'll see that I'm right, okay? So l'shimush ha'adam means, right, the world is here for us to use. What does that mean? Amnam hinehu omed b'shikul gadol, right? Because it's all here for us to use. And we look, especially today, I mean, he was saying this hundreds of years ago, but nowadays we look around, human beings in an incredibly powerful way dominate this entire planet, right? You know, for better or worse, many probably more for worse than for better, but we dominate this planet. It's just a fact. We do, right? Whether it's good or bad or in between. It's just it's the way it is, right? And so this human being is standing b'shikul gadol, meaning in a place with a tremendous amount of a dilemma, a tremendous test. A shikul is like how do you balance? Like a shikul is to balance something, right? So we're in a state where we have to balance things in such a way that we have this huge responsibility, right? If we are to go after this world, meaning, like he said before, go after our own selfish desires and pleasures, and we go away from that goal of achieving attachment to God and doing the right thing, he, the human being himself, will be ruined, and the entire world will be destroyed along with him. This is the insight of this statement. I know obviously this is a little bit anachronistic to think about climate issues, and say that that's what he meant, right? But it's impossible not to notice what he's saying, right? The fact that if human beings follow our selfish interests, the entire world will be destroyed along with humanity itself. And those are his words, not mine. I didn't read them into it, and that's not anachronistic, right? Ve'im hu sholet bi'atzmo, but if he takes care of himself and he rules over himself, right? V'nidbak v'bor'o, and he attaches himself to his pursuit of spirituality. And he uses the use that he gets from the world around him. He only uses it in order to aid in this worship of God. Then he is uplifted, and the entire world is uplifted with him. It's impossible for me not to comment here, right? That if a religion or a religious teacher teaches that it's for us to abuse the world around us and use it for our own pleasures and our own profit, and to use nature and the world that we live in for those reasons, right? That is the definition, according to the Ramchal, of following your own selfish desires and destroying not just yourself and your relationship with God, but the entire world around us. But if the religion that you're being taught and practicing uplifts the world around us, nurtures the world around us that we live in, all of nature, and brings benefit and bounty to everything, that is the type of spirituality and that we're supposed to be looking after. And this, again, it's remarkable that the Ramchal, in the beginning of his book, one of the first points he tells us is that through our spiritual development, all of nature benefits and becomes uplifted through our own spiritual development. It's truly remarkable that he says something like this, and it's something that I think you should keep in mind. And think about everything that we do, every single action that we take. Are we ruining the world around us, or are we uplifting the world around us? And just think about it. And that's an action that we can all do all the time. And that's part and parcel of the foundation of the Jewish religion. It's a tremendous uplifting to all of the creations, kulam. When they are used by a whole and complete human being, when the world around is being used for the proper purposes, right? Then it's a tremendous honor. The whole world is happy to be a place where humanity thrives and develops and grows, right? It's in the sense that the world can be happy, right? It's like the rabbis teach us when it refers to the light which is hidden for the future generation, sometime when the righteous ones in the future benefit from this light. Right? What does this mean? This is what they said. Right? When he saw that when light, meaning light itself, saw that God had put him away, special for the righteous, he was very happy. In other words, light itself was happy that it was going to be there to give light. Right? So light, which is what we nowadays often think of as just energy itself, is happy to know that the energy that it is giving energy to human beings so they come closer to God, right? When we live properly, when we live that kind of life. Nature itself becomes happy to help human beings when human beings have the proper goals. And like we see that when Jacob took a stone to rest his head on the stone, they say, all the stones gathered together in one place, and each one was saying that I want the righteous person to lie upon me. Obviously, it doesn't mean that the stones were actually having an argument who should be used as a pillow. It's trying to say that when a righteous person like Jacob is using the stone and living his life in a way that's proper, that uplifts the entire world, then the entire world wants to be uplifted with him. There's no enmity between a human and nature when we live our lives in that way, in that manner. Klalo shel davar, the rule of the bottom line rule of this is, and this is exactly as he says, the bottom line. Ha'adam lo nivra ba'avor matzavo ba'olam hazeh. A human being was not created because of his situation in this world that we are encountering in the present. We weren't created to experience this. However, right, Ela ba'avor matzavo ba'olam haba. We were created in order because of our situation in the world that is coming. Ela shematzavo ba'olam hazeh hu emtzai. But today we are given the means, right? The world we live in today is the means through which we build a better world that is coming, Shua Tachliti, which is the ultimate purpose, to build the perfect world, right? Remember, he doesn't say if we ever actually achieve that perfect world, or if it ever will be achieved, but that should be our goal. That is where we should be heading. Al-Kain, therefore, you'll find Ma'amarecha Chazal Rabbim. You'll find many, many, many statements of the rabbis, Kulam B'Signon Echad, all of them saying basically the same idea, where they Medamim Ha'olam Hazel L'Makom Uzman Ha'achana, where they compare the current existence of this world to the place and the time of preparation for something. The Olam Haba, in the world that is coming, they compare the Olam HaMenucha, the place where we find rest, Ba'achilat Hamuchan Kivar, and where we benefit, or literally eat, but benefit from that which the labor that had been done before, which gives you that sense that when we do the right things today, when we act in the right way today, then what we reap tomorrow is a little bit of that Olam Haba. It's a little bit. When we say Shabbat, for example, is Me'ein Olam Haba. It's a little bit of that world that is coming. Because we prepare for Shabbat. We do them. We make sure we have food to eat. We invite guests. We make sure we have some wine. We make sure we have some nice silverware and dishes and things. And then we prepare, and we get ourselves ready, and we get dressed nice, and then we sit down and we enjoy a nice meal. That's Me'ein Olam Haba. That is a little bit of the world that is coming because we prepared for it and we took a piece of it. We have a piece of it. That's what it says. What we mentioned before, Olam Hazeh Dom Leprosdar. right? That the world is like a vestibule, like I wrote before. And it also says Hayom. So the other statement that he meant before, and he mentions Shabbat, Mishatar Erev Shabbat, a person that works the day prior to Shabbat, Yochel b'Shabbat. He's the one who eats on Shabbat. He's using the same, the metaphor that I just used. The sea is like the world is like the dry land. You're preparing for a voyage in the sea. And the future world is like the sea, right? And a person that, if you don't prepare for your sea voyage, you're not going to have a very good sea voyage. You need to pack food, you need to pack water, you need to pack clothes, right? It reminds me of, I like to go hiking in the wilderness. I need to make sure I have a sleeping bag, I have a rain jacket, I have food, I have, a means to filter water so I can drink. If I forget one thing, it's going to be a pretty bad trip. One time I forget a rain jacket and the whole thing was miserable for obvious reasons. Right, so the world is like preparing for a voyage. V'tira be'emet shekvar lo yuchal. I'm wondering if we can. We started 15 minutes late, so I have a little bit less than half an hour to go. So we should be able to maybe finish this chapter, but if not, that's fine too. V'tira be'emet shek. Okay, so this is good. I want to do it, but this starts a little bit of a different thought. So let me have any comments on what he said until now about this world being, first of all, about through our actions we uplift the entire world around us, and this world being a place where we prepare for what's coming. Those are general ideas. If there's any questions, comments, if not, I could just move on.
It sounds a bit like the butterfly effect.
Well, yeah, certainly has
like what
yeah.
No action is small.
Yeah, everything has its effects. Everything we do, every decision we make. So v'tira be'emet, and you'll see indeed, right? Shekvar lo yuchal shum bal seichel lahamin shetachlit briat ha'adam hu l'matzav b'olam hazeh. How do I know that I'm right? How do I know that a human being is not created for what we have today? Maybe it's all about now. It's all about, eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow you'll die. Just enjoy the moment, right? This is what it's about. It's about today, now, and that's it, right? The consequences of that being, there's nothing wrong with deriving benefit, even if that benefit destroys the world around me, because I don't care about tomorrow, right? Tomorrow doesn't matter, right? If it destroys my life tomorrow, your life tomorrow, the world's life tomorrow, who cares? Right now, we're all good. I'm enjoying myself. I'm drinking a margarita. I'm on the beach. Everything's fine, right? But no smart person could even think. If you really think about it, it's obvious that the purpose of the world is not for the momentary pleasures. What are our lives like anyway? Right? The bottom line is we're nothing. We're fleeting nothings. Oh, Misha, who says, what is it so great that you have some happiness and peace in this world, in today's existence? We live, 70 years? If we are really strong and healthy, maybe we live 80 years, right? Most of those time we lived in this world, we're just working hard and suffering and pain. And is this what this can't possibly, no, who could think that a human being is that important, right? If we're just fleeting, our little existence is nothing, right? And then we have all this pain and suffering and illnesses. And after that we die, all of us. It's what happens to every single one of us. How could we be so arrogant and think that we're so important, right? One in 1,000, right, might be found who goes through this world and lives through all kinds of pleasures. How many people become a multi-billionaire and have 6 palaces and 12 mansions and own private islands and big yachts and jets and everything, right? And even that guy, right? Let's say he lives to 100 years old and has all the pleasures in the world. The bottom line, he's gone, he's finished, he's a piece of dirt just like everybody else. And it's 100 years later, 500, and nobody remembers, nobody knows, nobody cares. So it can't possibly be that's the point, right? And this is really, and this is just a fascinating idea. And if that was truly the point, and think for a minute, what makes us special as people, right? Why are we sitting here and thinking about how to be better and ethics? We're getting together on a Tuesday night. We could be home, I don't know, having a drink or whatever. We could be doing something that we find pleasurable, right? But instead, we're here studying because there's something inside us, right, that makes us want more, right? What is that? He says, um, if it was true that the purpose of the creation of man was for our momentary pleasures in this world, then there would be no need that a soul should have been breathed into our beings. Kol kach chashuvas, a soul that is so important, ve'elyona, and so lofty, shetia gedola yoser min hamalachim atzmam, that's greater than angels. Our soul, what makes us greater than angels? We can choose. We have something inside us that makes us so special and different. There has to be meaning to it. It can't just be pleasure. An animal feels it too, right? But they don't have this special soul that we have as human beings that makes us think, like, why am I here? What's the point? Why am I supposed to be doing this? Right? Right? I'm sorry, Olam, right? Certainly the that soul that's so special can't be getting benefit from these fleeting pleasures of this world. And that is what the Chazal, the rabbis, teach us in Medrash Kohelet, Zelashona, right? Kol amal adam lefiu v'gam hanefesh lo timolei, right? So it's referring to that verse in Kohelet, that all of man's toil is for his mouth, and we work really hard so we can eat, right? But the soul is not fulfilled. No matter how much we eat, we can eat all the greatest foods, but the soul doesn't get anything from it. Mashal, they compare it to the following story. You have a guy who's Ironi is just, an average guy from the street, right? A city dweller, right? Shenasa, in those days, a city dweller was usually more poor. It's the farmer that owns land. He's the rich guy, right? So you have a city guy, Shenasa Bas Malachim, he marries a princess. He can bring his princess all of the good stuff for him. For him, it's great because he got a hot dog, right? So he'll bring her a hot dog. And for him, this is the greatest pleasure in the world. And for her, it's like, what's this? I'm used to, a filet mignon. This is nothing for me, right? So it doesn't mean anything to her. Shivas Melch, she's a princess, right? How's he supposed to give her what she enjoys? Kacha nefesh, that is the soul. All of the things that we bring to her, we tell the soul, oh, this is awesome. We're going to buy a new house tomorrow. The soul doesn't care, right? I'm going to get a new car tomorrow. It's going to be the beautiful car. It's going to have fancy schmancy, this and that. The soul doesn't care. What does it care, right? The soul wants attachment to God. The soul wants something meaningful, right? The rabbis also said, we as a human being, when we were created against our will, so to speak. The soul, it didn't want to come down. This obviously doesn't mean there's a soul having an argument, right? You have to understand, the soul, it didn't want to come down into some crying baby so it should have dirty diapers, right? It wanted to stay attached to God, right? It wasn't interested in being here, right? We were born against our own will. The soul doesn't like this world. The soul wants the attachment to God, right? It's disgusted by this world. And God may be blessed, would never have created a creation for the purpose which is against its own nature, right? And it's disgusted by it, right? If God created a human being with a soul, something special, something that seeks more, obviously it wants more. And in our souls, there's something within our beings, there's something that wants more than just the fleeting pleasures of today. And the proof is in the pudding of all the people sitting in this room today. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We'd be pursuing our own pleasures. Right? right? The creation of a human being is in order to bring about the new situation that is in the world that is coming, right? That's why we have that soul, so that we know, we really stop to think about it and spend that time and get rid of those selfish desires, then all of a sudden we'll remember, whoa, the purpose of me being here is for something better. Is to make something better in the future. Is to do something, to bring about something that I really want, that is really good. That's why we have this soul, right? Because for that purpose, it's worth working for. And through that kind of work, a person can gain the true reward in its proper time and place. Right? In a place where it's not something which is disgusting to its soul, like the world we live in. Right? It's something that is more beautiful and more wonderful and more beloved than this world of Vizet Pashad, and this is an obvious, simple idea. V'hinei, achar sheyadanu zeh. Now I'm going to the end of this chapter, okay? After we know this, navin miyad, we will know immediately, right? Chomer hamitzvot asher aleinu v'ikar ha'avodah asher b'yedenu. The seriousness, right, and the gravity of the mitzvot, of the commandments that we are obligated to do, and the value of this work, of the service, right, that we have in our hands to do. Kihine, because in other words, now we understand the value of the actions. Because a person could say, well, then if the world is no point, then why should I go to work? Why should I do anything? Why should I build a family? Why should I build a community? Why should I do anything, right? You just told me this world is meaningless. So let me just sit in my house or sit on a mountaintop and just dream of things. We said, no, the point is that we have to do these actions in order to achieve that, right? So these actions are very important, right? And then he gives a very interesting comparison, right? Because these are the things that bring us El Hashleim to true perfection. Asher bil adam lo yusag klal, we will never achieve. You cannot sit down, and here it's kind of attacking a religion that teaches we should all just give up our attachment to this world and only be a monk, right? And not have the interactions that all of us, and stay away from worldly pleasures and simply concentrate and focus on spirituality and our relationship with God. That doesn't work, at least not in Judaism. That's not what we teach, right? All these actions are important. Our interactions with these worlds are very important, because it's our actions in this world that brings us to that attachment to God, right? We know that how do you achieve the purpose is by gathering together all of the means, every single thing that every person in this room and everywhere does has a part to play, a role to play in building that world which we're trying to build, right? And according to the strength of each of the means that we pull together to do, and using them, that is according to the amount of effort and energy and importance we put on the actions that we do. To that extent, we will find the results, right, be either good or not good. That's to the extent that the results will be more important. And any little difference that might be found in the means, we will be able to tell from its result, right? Clearly, right? When the time ultimately comes. So what he's saying here is that how do you know whether all those efforts were right? By seeing what was built, right? What was built in the end. So I'm trying to compare this in my mind to imagine we all get together to decide we're going to build a building, right? We're going to build, I don't know, a synagogue, let's say, right? So that we hire one guy says, okay, you know what? I'm a real estate agent, so I'm going to look for a good piece of property. But he needs to understand. We're building a synagogue, right? So he has to understand, where does the Jewish community live? Like, what kind of property would give them access to this synagogue. How big does it need to be? Are there 1,000 Jews in the town or 10,000 Jews? Are there 6 other synagogues and we're only going to have a small one, or is it not? Right? Are we going to need a playground, or are we going to not need a playground, and so on and so forth. So he has to buy the right piece of land. So his whole job is just to buy a piece of land. But how well the job he did of buying a piece of land, we'll know later on, right? When the synagogue is built and everyone's complaining, why'd you build it 16 miles from the neighborhood, right? Why'd you build the thing that nobody needs? Where's the playground? I have 6 kids in the back, and what are they going to do while I'm trying to pray, right? So that's, and the same thing with every single piece, right? So you'll know in the end, right, whether or not the job that was done, right, was done properly. So the same thing with the builder. A person is a builder. When the building gets blown down in a storm, well, why didn't you build a good foundation? Why did you make it out of the cheap stuff? Why did you so on and so forth? How come you made the social hall in the back and we all like it better in the front? Because who knows? So on and so forth. Every little job can be done right or not. And how do you know? The ultimate test is when you see the building go up. Does it work? Does it function? Does it serve the community how it was supposed to? Or not? And if the answer is no, then the work that went into it was wrong. And the same thing goes with our relationship with God. How will we know if we went on the right path? If in the end result, we got there. Vizebar, this is clear. Me'ata, now, Vada, it is clear. Vadahu, Shahadiktuk Sheyiduktak, that the care that you invest, right? Diktuk is like the specific detailed concern with the details. Al inyan ha-mitzvos, on the subject of doing the mitzvos properly, the avodah and the worship of God, mukhrach sheyeh b'tachlik, that it has to be done with proper care and concern for the details. Ka'asher yidaktiku shoklei hazav, just like a person who's weighing gold doesn't miss a tenth of an ounce, because every little bit is worth a lot of money, especially now when gold is worth God knows how much. V'hapeninim l'rov yikaram, or pearls, because they're so valuable, you don't say, whatever, it's $10, $11, it's 1.2 ounces, 1.3 ounces. Every tenth of an ounce makes a huge difference, right? When something is valuable, you don't make little mistakes, right? So because this, right, the consequences, the results of doing the mitzvot, of living the way we're supposed to, is so important, right? Because that is the true perfection, that is the true everlasting value, right, and eternal value, that there is no value that's more greater than that. Jeff, I see your hands up, but I want to get to the end of the chapter.
Okay, go ahead. I'll come back to it.
Hold your question, I promise.
Continue.
But I think we're going to finish in under an hour, which I think is an achievement.
Okay.
But nimtzenu l'meidim, it comes out. What have we learned, right? Ki ikar metziut ha'adam b'olam hazeh, the main reason why a human being is found in this world, hu rak l'kayim mitzvot, is the purpose is in order to fulfill the mitzvot, v'la'avod, and to worship, v'la'amod b'nisayon, and to withstand the tests that we are presented with. V'yahad ha'ot ha'olam, and the pleasures of this world, ein roi she'yilo ella le'ezer l'siu avovad. The purpose of the pleasures of this world, and remember, he's not knocking them. He's saying they are useful, but they are useful as a help, to help us get where we need to go, right? So the things that so the pleasure of the Shabbat meal, for example, is not just so that we should enjoy a good meal or good food. It's so that we can build relationships with people and help bring people closer together, help inspire people to have good conversations so people walk out inspired to be a better person themselves and maybe do something better for the community, right? And also so that a person can have that kind of peace of mind and pleasure, so that he can then focus his attention and his heart towards the voda hazos love, to this job, this task that he has. The omnam, however, and pretty much everything in Judaism always in the end boils down to humility. And this kind of runs across everything, and that's what he's going to end by saying this. You got to remember humility. The omnam, right? It is, and however, or And remember, ro'ilo shetia kol pniyas arak l'borei yisbarach. How do you achieve true humility? At least according to the Torah, it is by remembering that the purpose is our relationship to God. That's the point, right? When you do things, you shouldn't do it for any other reason. In other words, not for selfish reasons. Whether it's a big thing or a little thing, even if you're just going a walk down the block to pick up your mail, or if it's a big thing, some major project that you're in charge of. The purpose should be, is what I'm doing now bringing me and everything else around me, the entire world around me, closer to God. And to break all of those barriers that block between us and God and our Creator. What are those things? Those are all of these issues of physicality, right? And things that depend on them. So, and if you take all down these barriers, we will be drawn towards God like a piece of iron is drawn after a magnet, right? There's nothing, if you take the barrier away, it automatically goes. So in his mind, what he's teaching is, if you take these barriers away, our neshama, our souls, like he said before, will automatically draw us towards God. Anything that you think, right, that you imagine might be a means to bringing you closer to God, right? You're going to run after it. You're going to grasp it. You're going to search for it, because that is your goal. In other words, how do you know whether this action is right or not? If you take those barriers away, you will know this action is what brings me closer, right? It's something when I, in my field, and I'm sure everyone, and what we do every day, sometimes you just sit down and you don't know what the right thing to do. And then you say, you know what? This is the right thing to do. You just know this is the right way to. I can't necessarily give you a detailed, well-argued ethical argument, but come on, bottom line, this is the right thing, and that's the path you're supposed to take, right? And like an iron doesn't think when it's drawn to a magnet. Our souls are drawn there if you take the selfish barriers away. You stop thinking about how much reimbursement I'm going to get, and you stop thinking about whether or not this person the patient is nice or not, whether she smiles or not, whether she's poor or not, whether she has a million friends that are going to be your patient. You stop taking all the selfish barriers away, and you just think, what's the right thing to do? And then the answer is obvious, right? And the opposite is true too. And when anything you think might be something that takes us away from that path of God, you'll naturally run away from it like you run away from a flame. He's using the iron to a magnet on the one end, and a person running away from a burning fire on the other end. You don't think twice when you're running from a fire. You just run, right? There's no thoughts involved. There's no contemplation. There's no philosophizing. You just get the hell out of there, right? So it's the same thing when you think about, is this action right or wrong? This is just not right. I don't care how many lawyers can explain why technically you're not really violating the law, and the tax return, it's a little bit here, you can fuddle a little over there. It's okay, don't worry, everybody does it, whatever kind of nonsense they tell you. But you sit down and no, it's just wrong, and then you run like you run from a fire, because that's what you'll do. My soul is attached. It attaches itself after you. It gives you the feeling that you're chasing it, right? My attachment to God is something that I chase. Right. Your right hand upholds me. In other words, it's like God is holding us and pushing us in the right way. Since our entire entrance into this world is for this purpose, which is to achieve this attachment to God, when he saves himself from everything that takes us away from it. Now I'm going to finish in the last paragraph, and we'll still have a couple minutes we can talk. And after we know, and it's clear to us that rule that I just laid down, now Yesh lanu lachkar al prata, we could start getting into the details. I laid down the bottom line, right? Now let's get into the details. According to their levels, from the beginning to the end, like the Braita, which he mentioned in the introduction, that he's organizing this book, right? The statement, which were the Ma'amar Shalo, which I brought in the beginning of my book, and they are as follows. These are the steps that we're going to take in the rest of the book. Vigilance, alacrity, blamelessness, separateness, purity, piety, humility, fear of sin, and sanctity. And now, with God's help, we will explain them one by one. And in Hebrew, hazihirut, hazrizut, hanikiyut, haprishut, hatara, chsidut, hanava, yirat hachet, v'akedusha, v'yaton v'arim echad b'siyata d'shmaya. So that's the first chapter. Laid down the bottom line of Jewish ethics, and really, in many ways, the bottom line of the entire Jewish religion. I know there was a lot there, but there's a lot in the book. So, anyone wanna? You can say whatever you want now. The floor is open.
I think I'm so fixated on the world to come concept, just because there are so many parallels to the Christian world, and we just are so familiar, at least I'm very familiar with hearing that in reference to heaven and the afterlife kind of a thing. And I guess there's obviously some important distinctions. One of them is that it's not so far away. It's not this ethereal, celestial heaven. It's really like our actual world. It's like, as soon as you said, it's actually continuously happening in the present right now. It's a new world in a moment from now, or a day from now, or a week from now. That is the world that we're preparing. And I think that's a really important distinction with like the Christian vision, where it's also selfish. I think it's more like self-centered with the Christian view, because it's like you're preparing yourself for being rewarded, I think, in the world to come. Whereas you may not be here anymore, like you may be dead tomorrow, or you may be dead next week, but you're still tasked and obligated to make this world better for whoever it is that's left here. And I think that's really interesting. And I like it because it relates to Tikkun Olam, which is a guiding principle and value, and it just makes sense. Cool.
No, it's a very good observation. I think that sums up a lot of what he said. And Jeff, I see your hand is up. It's been up for so long.
Quick question. And probably I need to hold the question until we're at the final chapter, not the first chapter. But, they talk about mitzvot. That's the key word. We know there's 613, but by extension, if you live in Yesharim, there are 4,000 things. So does this mean that the only way to accomplish the objective is to observe all of halacha, and to go to Yesharim or communities like that, so you can observe all the mitzvot?
So I think that question is not something that the Mesilat Yesharim is dealing with. Okay. Like he's not taking. There's certain questions that he's not taking on. So I was thinking of talking about, for example, and I know this isn't what you asked, but it will answer what you asked, I think. Right. So my son, actually, I was having a conversation with him over the weekend about a rabbi that taught him when he was I think in high school, that the whole purpose of this, and they were discussing the question of theodicy, like why bad things happen to good people, why good things, and he said, no, everything, this world is not the main thing, right? The main thing is the world to come, right? And there it's it's like the great equalizer. If you're having a bad life now, don't worry about it, because later it's, the next world, it's all going to be good. And vice versa, right? You think he's doing great, right? Ramchal he's not dealing with theodicy, at least not here. There are other books where he talks about it, but not here, right? This book is about ethics, about living a good life, right? So here, the rabbi actually quoted from Mesilat Yesharim as a proof. You see, he says it's not about this world, it's about the next world. But that rabbi was not reading the Mesilat Yesharim. He was reading what his own brain wanted to see, right? And maybe I might be guilty of that too. I don't know. But because he was reading in the Mesilat Yesharim something that he's not saying. He deliberately, he doesn't tell us what Olam Haba is. He doesn't tell us when Olam Haba happens, right? He doesn't tell us anything about what the reward is, right? And he doesn't go into that much the concept of specifically what the mitzvot are, or anything. But he's just telling us that the mitzvot that are commanded to us in the Torah, right, is the path towards becoming closer to God. But the true test, when he tells the true test, he doesn't tell us to look in Shulchan Aruch for the test, right? The test is in your neshama itself, in your soul itself, is this something that's going to block me, that keep me away from God, or is this something that's going to bring me closer, right? And you know that answer. You usually know that answer. It's just naturally in your soul. And that's what he speaks about here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can come back to that, but I don't know if that's a practical guide to life, though.
I don't think he's giving it as a practical guide, but he is giving it as a guide, right? But yeah. Any other comments before we close up for the evening? Well, once again, I really want to thank Karen for hosting, and everyone that's here and everyone that's online. Our next session, I guess, will be in 2 weeks, right? Whatever date that is. Is that that would be today's May
10th, June 10th.
June 10th. Yeah, Mr. Hashem, we'll get together then again. All right, and we'll send out to everyone when and where it's going to be. All right. Have a wonderful evening. Welcome. Bye-bye.